Welcome to the Quit by Healing podcast. Today we have something that relates to a big problem in the world, one that I've talked about before, and I really love this episode because it's so practical and solution oriented. Today there are so many young men who feel lost and stuck and frustrated, and you feel like the world has let you down in a way. We live in a strange time. There's this sense that nobody taught us how to become men, and that masculinity is strangely publicly shunned, but also secretly required of us. And there's no one here to guide us through this kind of transition of going from, a lost boy to an actual competent, healthy, masculine, mature man. There's a whole crop of loud, obnoxious, self-proclaimed alpha males who all wear absurdly tight-fitting suits and make a lot of noise online. But I think that anyone who's spent some time there can tell, something here is missing. This isn't quite it. These aren't quite the guides that we need. And in many ways, they are actually just stuck in their own versions of boyhood. They are more a boy's idea of what a masculine man is like than an actual masculine man. So there's a crisis here when it comes to the development of men. And I've made a couple of content pieces about this. But today is something really special because this is a conversation with a good friend of mine, Darriall. The reason I invited him on this podcast is because he's someone I have seen with my own eyes go through this development, and he did it at a really rapid pace. When I met him, he was pretty frustrated. And I remember this from one of our first conversations. He had just moved away from his home country in Curacao and come basically all the way to the other side of the world. And he'd noticed that in many ways he was ill-prepared to actually live by himself and take care of himself.
I had to manage on my own for the first time, completely on my own. Now with that support where it's I can just drive to my parents' place or they can just help me out with something easy. For the first time, I felt oh wow, how do I handle this? How do I handle that? I didn't build these basic level skills just to kind of take care of myself or other people.
At the time, he was mad about the fact that nobody had taught him these basic life skills. And I think many of us find this, that we grow up, we're taught a lot of stuff, but then it turns out most of that stuff isn't actually useful. And why didn't anyone teach me the actually useful stuff? But enough of talking about the problem. Let's talk about solutions. Because like I said, Darriall is someone who faced this problem, but he also solved it for himself. And he made incredible progress in the span of just about a year. So let's jump into this conversation and you'll find out the clever life hacks that he used to practically force himself to grow and develop real life skills, the habits he developed to get into amazing shape and build mental resilience, what he learned about how to do ghost mode and how it can go wrong or right depending on how you do it, and many other topics. And all throughout this conversation, we always bring it down to the practical things that you can implement in your own life as well. So here is Darriall in our conversation and me just picking his brain on exactly what he did to speedrun this development and go from lost and frustrated to highly competent and capable in such a short amount of time. It all starts with his decision to move away, far away from his home country.
I would say even moving out was a deliberate decision in that direction, right? Because it was not the comfortable choice. Yeah. I could stay where I was born. I'd be way more comfortable. And I did that for a couple years and it was very comfortable. But I seem to notice this thing about my psychology where if I'm very comfortable and I'm not growing anymore, it starts to eat at me a little bit. I don't want to say that in this sense where you always need to be super uncomfortable or something like that. I like David Goggins, but it's not quite that I was trying to do necessarily.
You don't have to go that far.
I just wanted to grow.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I knew I was lacking in these areas. So I wasn't satisfied with certain things. And I was like, okay, what's the next level? I started traveling by myself. That was the first level. And then I was like, okay, I'm going to move out here. And that was the next level, figuring out how to manage things like housing and living with a roommate and finding your own community and still keeping up health and taking care of yourself and all these things and maintaining work. And so it's a bunch of things on top of each other and a lot of things I didn't have to deal with, mainly financially and from the perspective of managing relationships with people that I didn't have to deal with if I just stayed back home. So it's I just kept pushing myself to try to grow
Right.
in that sense.
So so that's an interesting point. Like even moving away from home was actually you trying to force some growth in a way, or you were getting uncomfortable on purpose. Yeah. So I think this is a really interesting point. For me, it was somewhat similar. Like when I left Switzerland, where I grew up, I took the chance to move to a different country, and I moved to Romania at the time, which was also the decision to go there was because it was a faraway place I'd never been to, because it's very different from Switzerland. It's like I deliberately didn't move somewhere close by to a similar culture, because I was like, no, actually I think I had the same kind of hunger of like, I want some challenge. I want things to be uncomfortably different, because that does lead to growth.
Yeah. And it's funny because I moved to the other side of the world, right? Like where I was born, it's like the West, like the Latin American side of the world, and like moving to Europe. So it's like huge time zone difference as well with everybody back home. So it also added this additional distance. The second I wake up, they're asleep. So it's like I'm not immediately bombarded by their messages and like requests to whatever, do answer something or spend time with me and stuff. So it's like I can initially have this time to myself, and I took really good advantage of that. I remember like I was working out and like a lot of health related activities and mental health related activities, long walks, meditating and all these things. And then when they woke up, which would be like afternoon for us, then like I'd start getting those messages and stuff. And I used to do this by waking up really early, even when I was back home, like having that initial time to myself, but it would be like 1 hour. And like when I moved here, it would be like, a good 6-7 hours.
Yeah, I think that's an interesting point, because of this kind of also the culture of, everyone's messaging each other all day. It's like harder for people to separate from their parents, which is something you need to do. And that you have to like go through that process of like unpeeling from your parents, which is, I think, difficult for the parents and for the child. Right?
Exactly. Both sides.
And I think this kind of thing, like constantly being in touch, actually makes that harder. And that might be one of the things that's like it stunts your development a little bit. I've never thought about that before, but I think that's really an important thing to consider. I think that's actually such a key point, because your environment has such a strong force basically on your habits and your behavior. I think that it is a real life hack. Essentially, a radical environment change is such a great way to kickstart development in your life. Like if you're sitting, I always think of it like if you want to eat healthy and your fridge and pantry is like full of junk food and ice cream and all kinds of stuff, then it's super hard. Like if your environment is full of unhealthy food, it's very hard to eat healthy. It's almost like it's kind of pointless to try and do it with your willpower. It's like you'll be burning so much energy just resisting the food, right?
Yeah.
It's much easier to put yourself in an environment where you're not surrounded by these temptations all the time. So in the sense of like if your goal is to eat healthy, like clean your immediate environment from unhealthy food. It makes it 100 times easier, right? And I think in a similar way, like, okay, if your goal is to mature as a man, what you need some adversity. What you need is you need to be challenged, right? And like put yourself properly in an environment that does that. It's so much easier than to kind of almost trying to artificially create it, right? You can't really artificially create the level of adversity and challenge you need to grow.
No, because you can instantly turn it off.
Exactly. Yeah.
It's like, it's not real.
It's not the same.
When you're left with like no options, that's like when you have to grow.
One of the things I'm thinking, like a lot of people will basically say, yeah, I would do that, but I don't have the money to do it.
And that's a really good point. I didn't leave until I was secure in terms of the money that I was making online to be able to travel and go somewhere else. Now, you don't necessarily need to. There are more ways to do it, but that's just how I did it. But maybe you could argue that I was also kind of delaying the decision that I had to make longer ago. Like some people, they just kind of decide to become a barista in some unknown country or city, and then that's kind of how they kickstart things. You've heard these stories. I don't know what the success rate is with those. I'm a person that likes to take more calculated risks, but that is a way to do it. Like
I think that is a wise way to do it, because to me, that is a good counterbalance, right? When you say, okay, you need to create some real discomfort for yourself, but you also don't want to be taking a reckless risk. And so I do think that, okay, in your case, you were doing freelance work, is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so you were doing freelance work, and so you basically waited until you had a good enough income stream
To be able to travel.
Yeah.
And yeah, because like initially when I started traveling, it was also pretty expensive. Again, figuring things out. Like I stayed in hotels and, very quickly realized how much money I was spending. But, luckily before that, I had been building up my career as a freelancer for like 2 or 3 years, partially because of COVID that it actually delayed it. So it was like I had a good amount of savings to be able to rely on. I didn't even rely on it then, but it's like I was spending a lot of money initially when I started traveling. But yeah, it didn't worry me yet.
Well, and I think it's a balance to strike, because it's also a mistake to take it to like be too risk averse, because you can always find a reason why, oh no,
Exactly.
I need one more client, I need one more whatever, before I do it. I think that's one way to do it. I would also say that having something like, well, you save up enough for the return ticket, it's like you have a separate account with whatever you need for the return ticket, and then you can throw yourself out there
Yeah.
and just be like, okay, push comes to shove, if I really have spent my last penny and I can't get the barista job, I can always get the ticket back.
You need to do these like worst case scenario planning. And I didn't do this, but it's something I've learned over time. I have a passion for like the financial markets. And it's like, as I study it more, like how actual investors and traders think, professional ones consider the downside risk before they consider the reward. And it's like, okay, so what's the worst case in this situation? If you're going abroad and it's like you don't have a lot of money, and it's like, okay, I have this amount of savings. I go abroad. The plan is to maybe find a temporary job or something. And if I run out, either you go back home with a bunch of new experiences, or you find some other kind of job there. But it's like, just consider the downside risk, and then you realize it's manageable. And then you like take that risk. Don't like think there's no way it can happen. And I was this kind of person. But it's like, just think about what's the worst that can happen, and then you'll know what to do in that situation.
Exactly. Yeah. I think that's a good way to make decisions, where you go, okay, if this goes super wrong and I'm basically still fine, right?
Yeah.
So like I survive it basically, then it's like, okay,
Yeah.
I can take that risk, and I don't have to like blindly hope that things go right.
Yeah. Yeah. Because
And I also-
you might get discouraged when it doesn't.
Yeah.
And it's like, you're going to need to be able to handle that level of it didn't go as I planned quite a bit in life, right?
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. I also think that there's quite a lot of stuff you can do. Again, like considering, the financial aspect, like, okay, how can you afford this? I mean, there's quite a lot of, like work and travel type stuff where I think you can give yourself that experience of, and you might travel to some farm during high season and help them pick their fruit or do their harvesting or whatever.
Yeah. I've got a buddy that did this.
Yeah, I know a bunch of people who did this too. And I did something similar when I was very young as well, where it's obviously, yeah, you'll be doing hard work and whatnot, but it's actually a great way to get out and also to see a totally different side of life. I mean, I grew up in a town. So for me that, like countryside kind of manual labor type experience was interesting, because it was also like seeing a different world. Yeah, this seems like, I think this is actually such a life hack, for anyone who like feels stuck. Like, yeah, put yourself in that situation. Like, find a way to put yourself in that situation that is, and like a sufficient disconnect. Right? You have to be, it has to be far enough away.
Yeah.
You have to be deep enough in. I guess what we're saying is almost like you have to throw yourself into the deep end of the pool, right? So that you can't just like stand up at any moment. And make sure there's a lifeguard around, but like,
Yeah.
right, there's some combination of like, you can't learn how to swim in the kiddie pool, basically.
Yeah. The idea of having a lifeguard around is actually really important. And lifeguard doesn't have to mean somebody that can like just snap you up and reverse the whole situation and it's like remove all risk. No, it's just even somebody to keep accountable to. Like what you're talking about, this disconnecting thing, it reminds me of like going ghost mode, which is like this term now, and like kind of disappearing from social media and like maybe friendships that aren't serving you, and just kind of working on yourself. I definitely think it can help, but there are very wrong ways to do it as well. And I've done it wrong like once that, I feel like that almost destroyed my life.
Oh, tell us about that.
Oh man. So this was like, I grew up on the Dutch schooling system, and it's like slightly different from, say, the US schooling system, or I don't know how the Swiss schooling system is, but it's like, you have your kindergarten, you have like your elementary grade school type thing, and then you have something that's kind of like a pre-high school.
Yeah.
And
yeah, we have that too.
yeah, well, I finished that pre-high school, and then I had to go to like this, they called it university, but it was like getting an associate's degree, the equivalent of that, which is like before you get a bachelor's or master's. When I started doing that, I had been following the schooling system for like 16 years up to this point. Well, not 16 exactly, but yeah, like I'm 16, 17.
Yeah.
I was already sick of it by that point. I already had different dreams and ambitions, and kind of was curious about entrepreneurial things, but more like as an artist. I was tired of like following that traditional path. I started doing that like pre-university level, and I just couldn't stick with it after a year. And like I had zero interest anymore. I felt like I completed the basic requirements of schooling that my parents would hold me accountable to. They were like, yeah, like after you finish this, like it's whatever, but just finish this, right? And then I finished that, and then I just dropped out. I did not know what to do with my life, but I just knew I didn't want to just do what everybody was doing, which was like continue going to school and then university and then get student loans and then get a job. And then it was just like I saw the whole life path laid out, and I was like, but I don't want to be like you guys. And so I dropped out. But here I am, and like totally went ghost mode, kind of like abandoned all my friends. And that was an era, like I would say it was 2 or 3 years after Facebook was actually popping. So it was like there was social media, but it wasn't quite like Instagram yet. And
it's not that level of brain rot yet.
Yeah, it wasn't quite there yet, but it definitely did exist.
Yeah.
And so it was already a point where it's like going ghost meant like getting off social media.
Yeah.
And I did all that. And like, I remember like a bunch of my friends were like wondering where I was, like if I was even alive and things like that, because I just cut off everything. And I was just trying to figure out who I was. There wasn't a lot of structure in place. I didn't have some kind of, course that's like turn your life around or something like this. I just watched a few YouTube videos from like some entrepreneurs like Pat Bet-David. And I'm like, man, like I want to do something different, but I didn't know how, didn't have structure. Nobody that I knew was able to lay out a path for me that I was also like into. So I just languished for like a couple years, like kind of doing nothing, mental masturbation, like trying to learn how to become a business person or something like that instead of just doing things, which is like, that's why they always say like execution is the only thing that matters.
Yeah.
Because I was like so in my head analyzing, overanalyzing things. And I did that for a few years. I only came out of it after I got a job by accident and I started working in video. And that kind of, again, put me in a very uncomfortable life because video was like a 24/7 type of job. Some days you work way more than 8 hours. You start in the morning and stop like the day after, depending on the shoot and whatever. And, heavy equipment, and, you have to be presentable, have to deal with clients. You have to like shooting weddings and music videos and commercials and all these things, taking care of all this hundreds of thousands of dollars in equipment, running around in a van and, trying to eat, like to nourish your body to keep going all day. So it was like the most uncomfortable job I've had till this day. That was like my version of the manual labor on the farm. And it taught me so much about just what I want to do in my life. And literally, it would have saved me years of just like doing nothing if I just started with that.
Dude, that's such an interesting point. Like, I think that every guy should have at least one really shit job at some point, right?
Yeah.
Now, I had more than one. I overdid it
Luckily.
on the shit jobs. because I do feel like it's character building. It's good for you. But like there's a limit. I definitely went past that limit where I was like, okay, I've had enough. I've done enough of the shitty work, But it is really good, I think, to see, the way you just described this, right? You kind of see like the chaos and the frantic nature of a lot of businesses are like that, or just the enormous amount of work that needs to be done in the background for some business to kind of be able to deliver their product in a seamless way, right? And I've also been involved, like I worked in, the worst job I ever had was in a warehouse, just like stacking boxes basically, And it's just like incredible, You think all they're doing is they're shipping product, but just there's a whole crew of people just doing backbreaking work in the warehouse all day for this to happen, right? I think doing like a year or so of work like that, of just like the shittiest work, is really good. It's really good because, well, like you said, it's way more useful in the end than watching videos about how to be an entrepreneur or whatever all day long.
100%. You'll start to discover these principles by yourself, and then just validate them by seeing people repeat it online.
Yeah.
But you'll have real experience to anchor those principles to, which is when it becomes actually useful, not by memorizing these principles, which is kind of my whole issue with formal education. But
Yeah, totally. Yeah, totally.
It's like memorize these principles without experiencing them. And
good luck. And basically, and then, answer the question on the test and immediately forget what you learned. Pretty much.
Exactly. Right? That's how real life works.
Yeah.
No.
So I think that's another very actionable, if someone is stuck in, if you're in that loop of, like you called it, mental masturbation. I mean, we don't want to call it that, but it is a lot of that, man. It is a lot of that. Like you're just watching other people live a cool life. You're watching other people be successful. You're watching other people talk about doing stuff that you wish you were doing.
Yeah. And I wanted to be a rapper. So it was like, that's what they do in their music videos. They talk about how cool they are, how much money they have, how many women they have, how many cars they have. And so it's like I was literally, instead of like seeing this on social with like the people do nowadays with influencers, I was seeing it, but like with these musicians. And it was like, I want all of that too.
Yeah, which also is, it just doesn't work, right? This kind of consumption, it also doesn't create the motivation you might hope it does. It's just like,
no,
it just keeps you consuming more, really.
Yeah. I feel like working that shit job is what created motivation for me. And I want to say I didn't have a lot of intrinsic motivation to make money before in my life because I did not grow up poor. I didn't grow up rich either. And it was like comfortable. We're not like struggling to pay the bills at the end of the month. Money wasn't like a thing that was always in my mind. Like, like some entrepreneurs, they grow up with that because their whole family grew up struggling. My parents and grandparents, they took care of me. So it was like we didn't grow up struggling. So it was like money wasn't the primary motivator. But when I started working that shit job, I understood on a physical level, this is what you're going to have to do if you don't have skills that are worth more money to people. And then I was like, wait a minute, with this salary, how am I supposed to get an apartment and live on my own? Oh, I actually need to want to make money. And it created it.
100%. And I want to emphasize, like, hearing us talk about this is not the thing.
No, either.
It's even if you think, I get it. No. Get the shit job. Get the shit job. Like you said, you get a physical, like your body needs to learn it. Your body needs to. This is how hard I worked for whatever $10 or whatever I got paid.
Man. Like get the McDonald's job, and it's like if you can't bear the thought of doing it in your home country because like social shame and stuff also comes with it. Get it in a different city, in a different country.
Combine
some kind of shit job. Doesn't have to be so customer facing like you worked in a warehouse.
Plenty of shit
jobs.
It all works. Plenty of shit jobs. Don't see people all day long.
Plenty to go around.
Yeah, honestly, that is so good. I also want to quickly get back to like the whole, the ghost mode thing. I think it makes so much sense, like to get yourself away from these algorithmic content feeds.
Yeah.
That stuff is, I think the term brain rot is great. I love the term brain rot. I love that that's going around.
It's like a rising term, right?
Yeah,
I've seen it somewhere.
And I think that is a great term because honestly, that's what it feels like. The stuff rots your brain. So in that sense, like, get off social media, like disappear. but like disappear from this online world. I think you can, it's a great idea to say, you know what, I'm going to step away from all of this. I'm going to step away from all of this stuff that it's so normal. You know, everybody's glued to their phone all day.
Yeah.
Everybody's messaging each other all day. Everybody's on all the social media. Everybody's so obsessed with this stuff and saying, okay, I'm going to step away from all that. And in that sense, yes, become a ghost. But don't become a ghost and retreat into your room and just sit there.
You still have to be in the real world somehow.
Yeah. Be in the real world. Be engaged in the real world. You know?
And I think that's the part of going ghost that I don't see people address a lot. It's this idea that I'm going ghost mode on my laptop in my house. And it's like, you know how easy it is to, again, waste years trying to figure out how to make an online business work when you've never actually worked for real.
Also, I want to say this. This is one of the things that, in my own experience of also having to figure stuff out, having to become an adult, one of the things that I was kind of pissed off about is like nobody told me this. Nobody told me it's all about who you know.
Oh my God, Shane. I literally reaffirmed this lesson like this past month or so. But yeah go ahead. Tell me.
Yeah. It's all about who you know, or rather it's all about who knows you. You want to become a successful, you want to have your own online business, right? Everybody wants that basically. Go work for someone who has an online business. Do an internship. Like I've done this. I've had people like do apprenticeships with me, you know, where it's just like, you work with me for a few months and I teach you like the skills that I would want you to have. And if you're good enough, I'm going to end up hiring you, right? Like find someone, and again, this might be a shit job, but like find someone who has a successful online business and find a way to work for them, right? Can I edit your videos? Can I write your emails? Can I get your coffee? Whatever, right? Find a way to get connected to something, like, because if you're spending time around it, so if you see the inside of the kind of business you want to grow, you're saving years of trial and error. But also, if you know that person, right? You know that person who is in this business, in this market, and they know other people, and maybe you go to the conference and you meet people and so on. That is such a fast track to doing your own thing versus just, again, like sitting at home watching videos trying to figure it out by yourself. That is the ultra long way around.
100%. And when I reflect on it, every major job, gig, opportunity that I got was because of who I knew. And it's crazy when you really think about it, because like from that very first shit job, I was not looking for that job. Somebody asked me to volunteer. I was like starting to get into photography. Somebody asked me to volunteer to take photos at an event. So I was like, okay, I don't got anything to lose. And this was like during my ghost mode period. I go there, I do it, and my future boss at that job saw me doing it, and he just came up and was like, hey, like, come to my office and, or do you have a job? And I was like, no. And he was like, come to my office and we'll talk about it. And I was like, okay, that was easy. And like, it feels easy when you know somebody, because like they create the opportunity even when you weren't looking for it necessarily. Of course, I don't encourage people to be passive about these things. Like, it's definitely better to like actively do it, but like it gets created even passively, right?
Wow. Yeah, and it's about engagement in real life, right? Because he saw you do a thing, you know?
Yeah, and I wasn't even good or anything like that.
Right.
He just saw me do a thing. That's it.
And I mean, that's also something, you know, especially when I was younger, before I had experience and all this kind of stuff, which is obviously it's the hardest time in a way to get work, right? When you don't know what you're doing yet and you don't have experience, you don't have credentials, whatnot. I also got a bunch of gigs like that. And it's all about like the engagement in the real world. You know, there was like an indoor climbing gym where I went to a lot, and I was chatting to people there, and they were like, oh, they were looking for people who can help them with like groups of kids, you know, to kind of supervise them. And I was like, sure, I can do that. And I got paid like a little bit. And then when they were doing construction, they also hit me up as like, can you help us out? We need people who can climb basically to like do construction and cleaning and whatnot. And I'm like, yeah, sure. But it's like, this only happens again. If I'm at home at my laptop, this is not going to happen.
Never
right?
happens.
Like, I have to be out there, and I have to be
there.
talking to people and stuff. Right?
Yeah, yeah. And even if you just go out and you're not actively talking to people, opportunities will start to present themselves to you. It's just how the world works. So it's like, yes, talk to people, but even if that's uncomfortable, because I did have this phase where I had a bit of social anxiety too. So like, I'm just trying to think for the viewer, maybe even that's uncomfortable. Like, but just go somewhere and like opportunities will start to present themselves. But it's literally all about who you know. When I started freelancing, at some point I got like a full-time contractor job. I was freelancing for like the content manager at this company, and then they were gonna look for full-time people. Who's the first person they asked? The person they're already working with, who you know. This type of thing kept repeating. Later on, when I'm looking for a job, at this point, I have a little bit more money to spend, and I enlist the help of somebody that helps people land jobs. Literally, he introduces me to people looking for something, and it's like I get to skip the line from people that are applying with their resumes and stuff, and I just directly get to know the decision maker. And like these things showed me that, bro, in life, it's all about who you know, like getting ahead. So it's like what you want to prioritize is meeting people that are actually valuable in terms of what you want to be doing.
And I would say, you know, the fact that now people are so online and more people, don't have the experience of like talking to people, connecting in real life and whatnot. I think that makes it an even more valuable skill now.
Yeah.
You know, you stand out even more if you can do this. I also want to say, man, this just reminded me of another shit job I had.
This whole podcast is like shit
this
jobs.
is the shit jobs podcast. but like, you know, there's a lot of talk about like social anxiety and whatnot. I think that's a big label to put on. I feel uncomfortable talking to people. Guess what? So does it almost everybody. You know, that's normal. Like, especially if you have no experience doing it, the idea of talking to a stranger is uncomfortable. It's normal. You don't have this is not a mental health thing. You know,
the basic level does not mean social anxiety.
And if that's one of the things you struggle with, man, take a soliciting or sales job.
I was thinking the same thing, man.
Because that will absolutely blast
destroy
your shyness to smithereens, man. I had a job, you know, soliciting, trying to get people to donate to Greenpeace, you know, just like on the street soliciting.
Wow,
bro,
that
like,
is like in-person sales jobs. That is the hardest,
dude. You get so many rejections.
But you become rejection proof if you keep doing it, right?
Yeah. And I also noticed that, you know, I became like talkative and friendly in a way. You know, I'll just talk to the person at the checkout in the grocery store and the person serving me coffee. I'd just be chatting with people because it's just so normal now. You're just talking to everyone, you know, and I never used to do that. And that was, and I only had this job for like a week or something, was because my quota, I didn't meet the quota, right?
Yeah.
It's really brutal.
You learn a lot there too. It's like, performance-based like results. Like a lot of people, they have jobs and it's like you get this salary for doing this task, but there's no real KPI attached to the task, and there's no consequence for like failing KPI. But like even that experience,
busy.
Yeah, right. It prepares you for being an entrepreneur, right? Like, if you don't make this amount of money, like your business doesn't work, like you have to shut it down. This is the real world. Like if you want to keep leveling up, you get to that level where you're paid based off performance, and it's really hard. But like, again, it's like the comfort zone thing.
100%. And if you're good, you get rich, basically.
Yeah, you get rich. That's how you get rich. Everybody who gets rich gets paid based off their performance.
So like you were saying, you know, this has become the Shit Jobs podcast, but it's interesting to think because in a way that I feel like that is the advice that a lot of people need to hear. It's like, look, you want to experience a accelerated development from like boy to man, essentially, right? You want to have these life skills. You want to make shit happen. And part of the problem is like you're circling the drain of whatever, watching content online, trying to get the tips and the hacks and the tricks and so on. This is it, right? This is what you don't want to hear is none of that shit's going to work.
Yeah.
Like including listening to this is not going to help. Right? If you just go, oh yeah, good idea. No, this is not going to do it.
All it can be is a wake-up call.
Exactly.
That's it. And it's not going to be some permanent form of motivation, or I need to feel motivated, said by somebody who doesn't even know what it feels like to be motivated. It's not like some euphoric feeling, right?
Right. And also it's like this is also the great thing about working one of these jobs. It's like it doesn't matter if you feel motivated or not. You're gonna fucking build this wall today or whatever it is.
Yeah.
And the weather is shit and you feel bad, it doesn't matter. You're just gonna do it anyway.
Bro, like that is literally like what the video job felt like, man. It's like no holidays, no nothing, and no weekends. and it's no set hours. And it's like you just go to work every day, whether you feel like it or not. And some days you come in not feeling like it. Guess what? You still have to do it. And it's like you learn something like that can never kind of be taken away from you by doing that.
I do think this is probably one of the most powerful things you can do, is essentially thrust yourself into circumstances that force you to grow. And I would also add, I bet some people are listening to this and be like, dude, I've been working a shit job for a long time, right? If that's the case, and again, you're stagnant, then the question is, how can you put yourself out? You've become comfortable working this shit job, right? What is the thing you can do that's outside your comfort zone?
It seems like every level, there are like traps where you can kind of get stuck in a level that you don't want to stay stuck in.
That's a good
right?
point,
Like
yeah.
you said, you also worked the shit jobs too long.
Yes.
And like I had one shit job and I worked it for 2 years. And it's like, then I escaped.
That seems
like,
very efficient.
like, of course, I had like a summer jobs or something as a kid. But like when I really started working, well, what would you say when it comes to like not getting in the cycle of just working one shit job or multiple shit jobs for forever, basically?
Yeah, I think it's the same thing, right? Is you got to ask yourself, like, how come I am stuck in this? In a way, even if you're complaining all day and you don't like it, you are still stuck in what you know, right? You're in that sense, you've created a new comfort zone for yourself and you're stuck in what you know. An equivalent of this for me is also as an entrepreneur, and I've been an entrepreneur most of my life. That's my main experience comes from there. But I also had this several times actually, where I get into a certain mode of like, this is how I build my business, this is how I work. And then I get stuck there, I'm plateauing there. And I have to do something to experience further growth. And one of the examples was I had to learn to not do everything myself. Like initially I bootstrapped everything. I was very used to just doing everything myself. But that kept me stuck at a certain level. You can't grow that far with that attitude, right?
Yeah.
And so I had to learn to really let go of stuff. And I had to learn to also change my role of, I can't just be the doer. I have to be like the manager of the people doing. That was a super hard transition for me. Yeah, the risk is that I just stay stuck at that level of, okay, I do everything myself. And I'm kind of also overworked and stressed and so on. But still, that can be my comfort zone. Even if I hate it, that can be my comfort zone.
Yeah.
Because I'm too scared to actually take the leap to start hiring people and actually delegate and actually let go of stuff. Basically, it doesn't matter how happy or unhappy you are in a loop and you have to break out of whatever you've gotten used to in that loop for the next stage of growth.
Yeah. I think you mentioned one thing that was really important there. You said it was your comfort zone, even though you hated it.
Yeah.
And it's like one thing becomes clear by that statement. Comfort zone does not mean that it actually feels good. And leaving the comfort zone does not necessarily equate with like some kind of physical pain or something like that. It's about uncertainty. It's not about how it feels necessarily. It's just about you don't know what the outcome is. That's what we mean when it's like, it's painful, it's this, it's that,
100%,
uncertainty.
100%. And I think this is also true in so many other aspects of life, like relationships. This is also something that a lot of people experience, also something I've experienced, where your quote unquote comfort zone can be a certain kind of like toxic, dysfunctional relationship.
Yeah.
And it's the same kind of thing. Like you have to grow as a person in order to be able to have a different kind of relationship. And that relationship might be way better, way easier, way more fun, but you're not sure. You're not sure what will happen if I change my behavior. What will happen if I do this growth? Maybe it'll go wrong. I don't know. And this is true for like romantic relationship, but also relationship with family and friends and so on, right? I think this is actually almost one of the rules of life. Like we tend to be stuck in a loop, or we tend to be in a loop essentially. Mm-hmm. And that loop can be positive. It can work, right? It's like, it can be something like a good habit is a loop. I keep doing the same thing. It keeps making me feel great. Okay, good, right? It's like I keep going to the gym. Good. It can be a bad habit. It can be an addiction, but it can also be like your attitude to work, what you bring to relationships and so on. You're basically always in a loop. And you got to look at the loops in your life that are not serving you, and you got to get uncomfortable to get out.
What I would say about the loop thing and like not getting stuck in loops, when I think about it, the most important element for me there is agency to start with. It's like, is this loop self-created? Oftentimes these loops, somebody else has created them, and like we're we're allowing ourselves to stay in that loop, right? Like, for example, these people, this job, right? This boss, like he created this loop, which is your job, this like sequence of tasks that you keep doing like a computer, and you're allowing yourself to stay in it for whatever reason. I need to pay for this, or I don't know, I don't have any other skills. And that's why I think what you said when it comes to like building sales skills, it's one of the most important skills to build because, again, what we mentioned was it's about who you know. And what is the skill of knowing whoever you want to know? It's sales. And so sales is this universal way to kind of move from shit job to better job to best job. And it's also the skill that pays you based off performance, which is like when you're at the top level, that's kind of how you get compensated, right? Learning sales in some form or another is probably one of your best bets. And even with that, I say as a disclaimer, a lot of sales jobs suck, meaning you work hard and you're not well compensated. But if you're just getting started, it's amazing to learn, right? And you'll probably make more money than you do if you're just working like some shit job to get by anyway.
An interesting indicator of this is one of the things you said, like, you know, the first time you worked this video job, like it blew your mind, right? It's like gaining so many perspectives, you're learning so many new things. Once that is no longer the case, it's time to find a new thing that blows your mind again.
Yeah. And it's funny because I naturally kind of knew when it was time to leave too, because I started transitioning over from doing more video naturally to marketing in that business, and like supported by the founder as well. He was like, actually, your skills are better suited to this. And like, let's figure out if we can start a new business unit based on this. And it was just naturally me kind of outgrowing the business. And like, even though he wanted me to stay there and wanted to create new roles for me to stay there, that wasn't the core business. And he just couldn't spread himself so thin. But like, he would have kept me. But I naturally kind of started stepping out. And what I didn't know I was doing back then was actually using sales skills. I just started reaching out, prospecting, looking for people that were looking for what I do. And I found one person, and then that led to another and another. And it was like, oh, I just built a new job here. And then I resigned from the other, and the rest was history.
I think this is, I really love this. I think this is actionable and counterintuitive. Yeah, I think a lot of people need to hear this and probably don't want to hear this. But I quickly want to get back to your story as well. Like, you said something about health habits, like fitness was important to you. But you also said something about like mental habits or something like that. Can you tell us more about that?
Well, when you met me, I was very into like developing my mental health more than ever before. Meditation was like a cornerstone of that. Back then, I was walking up to 4 hours every day, and I didn't have to, but I actually enjoyed it. So because I was in this European time zone and my whole morning, I didn't have to deal with work or people, because they worked in the US time zone and all of that. I would just wake up, walk to the gym, was like 1 hour. I would work out 1 hour. I would walk back 1 hour. That's already 3 hours of exercise, actually. And in the evenings, I would also like to wind down, probably walk a little bit. Just doing that every day got me like in the best shape of my life. It was like, before that, it was like years since I had been that shredded. And it was like a crazy experience. But it was like those walks. I even meditated on those walks. I remember like the things I was learning, I was like practicing like, okay, let me try to feel every step intentionally and things like this. So there was a lot of, mental development there too. Outside of that, being accountable to the right people, person or people, like, is one of those other hacks to force yourself to grow.
How did you, so first of all, I want to just add, yes, I think walks are super overpowered, right? Basically, every genius who ever existed has said in some form that walking is where it's at. You know, it's like, that's where you have your best ideas. That's how you let your brain do its work and so on and so forth. Right? It's like walking is really overpowered, and it's also pretty good for getting in shape.
Yeah. Very underrated.
Yeah. So really amazing habit to do. But yeah, accountability. I think that's also something that a lot of people struggle with, right? It's like, who holds you accountable? How did you solve this?
Different people hold you accountable during different periods of your life, is what I think. So at one point, it might be your boss, but then at another point, it might be your partner. And another point, it might be a good buddy of yours. It's like I see this in different ways when I went to Thailand to like one of these Muay Thai gyms, and there's so many guys. There are women there too, but like 80% guys. I see how these guys, they hold each other accountable to working out every day. And like, all right, I'll see you tomorrow, right? And it's like, and you're like broken and like limping back home, and you're like, yep, you'll see me. And so
Why did I agree to that?
yeah, exactly. But it's like you keep doing it, and then you build this resilience, and then when you get to a point where you're like, you don't even recognize who you were before that. And it's like, again, going to different places. Like I know a buddy that I met in Thailand. I think maybe he just finished studying or something, and he went to Thailand. I think he even took a loan or something to start a business, went to Thailand, and basically he worked out and like networked there. I could tell he was like networking, man. Like he would come up to me and be like, yeah, man. So like introduce himself. What do you do? Like when we're basically getting a 5-minute break from like working out, and I'm like, what's up, man? and like I saw that he did this with multiple people there. Coincidentally, he was looking for a sales role, but I referred him, and I don't think he ended up like getting that role, but like, you know, you just talk to people, and then, you know, people create opportunities for you just because you're there. Coincidentally, I saw that this gym was a place where I didn't even know this before, but many like popular influencers went there to work out. Like it was a Samui gym. Even now, when I came back, I'm like looking back, and I discover new people that were there that I didn't know who they were, but they're actually popular online. And I'm like, damn, if you just networked more, you would have met so many A players there, because for some reason, all of these guys are going to that gym and you didn't even know it.
Yeah, I think training is such a great way to meet a certain kind of person, right? Because we've been talking about how important it is, like who you know and who knows you. But then, of course, how do you meet the right kind of people? How do you meet the people who are basically, let's say, going to be helpful allies on your journey? And a great way to select is go train somewhere where people train hard, because that attracts a certain kind of person.
Yeah. A certain mindset.
And yeah, for sure. So like a Muay Thai gym, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu is also huge, right? And a lot of like high performance people are really into BJJ.
And it's a low barrier, right?
Yeah.
Because like if you're starting out, how do you get in the same room? It's not by going to a country club or like trying to pretend like you're a high roller, like the way I see it sometimes portrayed on TV. Oh yeah, I faked my way into this party. In my experience, that's not how you do it. It's what's the lowest barrier way, and it's usually just working out. Yeah. Billionaires will be working out with you and you won't even know it, bro. Like I've met like wealthy people like that, and it's then later on when I realize they're wealthy, I'm like, huh.
Yeah, and it's because they can just be some guy in a gym, right? Which is also a relief, right? So I think that's a great, and you know, even if you don't, not everybody's gonna walk into a gym and meet a bunch of millionaires or whatever. But even if you don't, it's like, again, there's gonna be a culture of we work hard, you know, and we support each other, and that's also one of the things I would look for. Like when you're looking for a gym, I mean, I think martial arts is really good for this. But also you can look for like, what's the culture there, and go check out some different gyms, because in some the culture will be a bit shit, you know, and people are a bit toxic or whatever, or they're very focused on just like, we just want to train a couple of people to do fights, and we don't really care about anyone else, right?
Bro, the gym selection is so important. Like even now, I struggle to find another martial arts gym close by me that has it, right? That X factor. And it's like, you don't find it everywhere. So it's like, if you go to one and it's not it, like it's just probabilities playing out. Like it doesn't mean like you're not going to get that same benefit somewhere.
Exactly. Right? So find the gym. And like you were saying, or you were walking an hour to a gym.
And it's like, make that your workout and meditation practice like in one.
And it's worth it. It's worth finding a gym that has really good culture and that has, because even if you just meet like, you know, quote unquote normal people, it can still be a great place to find someone who's like, yeah, I need someone to hold me accountable.
Bro, you'll meet people on the come up even, right? Like you don't know if a couple years from now these guys are not going to be the next, whatevers. And they're going to, if you're their buddy, who do you think they're going to ask when they need somebody additional on the team?
Which is also, I think, is super underrated. If you meet and network with just ambitious, driven people who maybe haven't made it yet, but those people are great to have in your life.
When you're a rapper specifically, you realize how powerful that is because they do features, right? And features are a way to expand your audience. It's like, I'll do a feature with him. And if you do them for free, it's like your network effect builds even faster. Oftentimes, sometimes you can take practices from one world, put it in another. And entrepreneurs, they don't often think in those ways like content creators do, but like other types of entrepreneurs don't think like, hey, I can do a feature with this guy, cross-pollinate our audiences and grow even faster.
I think that this kind of features approach actually happens everywhere because it can just be, like, okay, I know someone who's looking for whatever, they're looking for a copywriter. And I go, oh yeah, I know a copywriter from when I worked with whatever, they're maybe available for a gig.
Exactly.
And you make that connection. And that can be like, oh yeah, it can be we just need help right now for this one page. Okay, that's a connection. And in the future, that might turn into something else. Next time you meet this guy, it's like, oh, now I work for them full time or whatever,
Yeah.
But it's the same idea because over a couple of hops of connections, that one person doing that one gig for that one other person means it's like a feature in the sense that there's now more people who know you and know the skills
by virtue of that one person.
Yeah, exactly.
I even haven't mastered this skill, but it's like tapping into networks is one of, if not the most powerful skill and sub-skill within sales. Because like this whole 6 degrees of separation concept is true. And it's like, I would know because like just in my personal life, I've been 1 degree of separation away from a billionaire. You might not even know how many powerful people you're actually connected to.
For sure, right? By a few hops, you're connected to so many people.
Yeah, it's insane actually when you think about it.
All right. So I think we can wrap it up here. I feel like this conversation kind of went in a totally different direction than I thought it would, but in a very good way. So I love this. I wonder how people will respond to this, but I think this is the sauce, this is like the sauce. It's up for grabs, right? All of it, because I think the common thread here is all of it is like out there, it's available out there. And you might feel very uncomfortable. It's like, oh no, but I'd rather watch the next thing on my little screen.
Prepare a little bit more.
Exactly. But no,
bro.
The thing you want is out there. And yes, it's uncomfortable, but go get it.
Yeah. Like 100% just do it in the real world. It will translate into the online world if that's where you want to be next. And yeah, you'll have a leg up on other people because you know what real work is. And you're not just, trying to pretend, like trying to make something work online.
Exactly. Yeah. So, okay. So thank you very much for sharing this with us. Is there something that you want to plug? Is there do you want to plug your Instagram or your something?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I'm not super, active on there, but at Instagram, you can get me at DMJPort, DMJPORT. Yeah. And, try to connect with me there or find me on LinkedIn, Darriall Portillo.
Okay, and we'll put the links in the description as well. So that's that.
Yeah, thanks. That. Until the next convo.
Yeah, thanks, and until next time.
Yeah, see you, brother.
So that was my conversation with Darriall. I hope you enjoyed it. Personally, I enjoyed this a lot, also listening back to it. I can really feel the warmth and caring that is coming from this, and I hope you can sense that as well. Something that I have in common with him is we both like to optimize our lives. We both strive to be high performers. We're ambitious. We like to win, but we also like to see other people win. We also like to help other people win, and I think that really comes through. And I hope you could get a sense of that as well as you were listening. I'll put Darriall's socials here on the screen, and you can also find them in the episode description. You can find the links in there. So go give him a follow. if you want to see what else he's up to. If you enjoyed this content, please let us know by leaving a like, leaving a positive review in your podcast app, and also leave a comment with your feedback, your questions, or just a random comment as an algorithm boosting signal so that more people can find this content. That is all for today. Thank you for tuning in, and I'll see you in the next one.